Morning.
AI is no longer just a technology question. It is a management question, a workflow question, a data question, and a security question. Today, we're joined by Magnus Jern to unpack what it really takes to succeed in business with AI. Magnus is a serial entrepreneur, operator, and technology leader with a rare combination of commercial depth and hands-on technical expertise. He has co-founded 7 companies, achieved 4 successful exits, and brings around 35 years of software development experience across more than 20 programming languages. Magnus built and led Golden Gecko, one of the early leaders in enterprise mobile solutions. He developed a business from the ground up, made it cash positive within 19 months, scaled it globally to around 350 people and 30 million in revenue, and successfully sold the company to DMI in 2013. His earlier background also includes senior strategy and product roles at Vodafone Group Marketing and Orange Scandinavia, where he worked on large-scale digital services, go-to-market models, multi-country product strategy, and innovation programs at corporate level. Today, Magnus is co-founder and CEO of XHuman Labs, where he has been evaluating AI tools, designing internal AI processes and tool chains, and helping deliver projects across logistics, legal, HR, analytics, customer service, and enterprise automation. Magnus has also been part of the VCA network since November 2017, became an official VCA member in February 2025, and took on a more executive role as CTO for AI adoption in February 2026. Beyond the professional side, Magnus is also a father of 3 and lives in Andalusia, Spain. In this conversation, we'll explore why so many AI initiatives fail to scale inside companies. Knowledge stays trapped in individuals, shadow AI grows outside governance, messy data blocks progress, and undocumented workflows limit automation. We'll also look at what leaders need to put in place today to prepare for the next step: secure, practical, business-ready AI agents. So this is not a conversation about hype. It is about turning AI from isolated experiments into institutional capabilities and competitive advantage. Magnus, welcome.
Thank you for having me today. Excited.
Magnus, we see pockets of excellence where one employee is a wizard with LLMs, but the rest of the team is stuck. How does a CEO transition from individual AI productivity to institutional AI intelligence?
Yeah, I think a lot of CEOs are currently asking that question because so many of them, what they were told to do by their strategy consultants was give everybody a ChatGPT or a Copilot license and the rest will solve itself. And then 3 months later, they noticed that only a few percent of their employees were actually using it actively in a constructive way. And that many people are still using their own personal accounts. So it's a bit of a mess. But I think it's relatively easy to sort out. So thankfully now, some of the LLM providers are providing better team accounts. And there's also collaboration tools like the one that we built at XHuman Labs for P30. And the whole idea is basically that if you can get people onto the same platform, into the same chats where they can share things, they can see what others are doing, they can help each other set things up, then suddenly you will see that a team lead can get the whole team with them and starting to use it every day, every week, and delivering on use cases and not just having access to an LLM.
So what are the specific rituals or ceremonies a leadership team should implement to ensure AI learnings are shared across departments rather than dying in a private chat history?
Yeah, so I think one thing is obviously an easy thing, especially if you talk to the IT security department, is they will say, shut down all of the shadow AI right now. So like force people to stop using their personal accounts and so on, which obviously you should do. But what you really want to do is you want to channel all of that positive energy, the positive use cases, and get them onto your corporate platform and using that. So I mean that I think that's actually number one is that ask them. So what do we need to do to make our platform, whether it's Copilot or ChatGPT Teams account or P30, what do we need to do to make that work for you so that you can use that every day together with your team? So that's, I think, number one. The second thing is to help set up, like, to really think about what are the quick wins in terms of use cases that you can do. And obviously, there's lots and lots of examples of this, but we've worked with a lot of consumer brands, and in their case, it's often they have challenges like brand compliance, making sure that all of their social media content is actually compliant with their guidelines, and and they don't have time to check on this, especially if they have a lot of international partners, they have teams spread out. So one of the first things that we've done there is to set up a channel where they can create content, but they can also check content that they're about to publish and make sure that it's compliant. So they just cut and paste the screenshot, they cut and paste the content that they're about to publish, and it will tell them if it's compliant, and if it's not, what they need to do to improve it. So that's like an example of something that is actually a quick win. It can also be for sales teams, just setting up like I think more and more salespeople are using LLMs to create sales proposals, which is great. But the challenge again is that if you create them on an LLM and then you have to copy paste it back into a Word document or Google Docs, then you're losing a lot of things. And then you get customer feedback afterwards, and you have to go through and do the same thing again. So for example, just setting up a workflow in an LLM that creates proposals based on a template and makes it easy to edit it and to share it with your colleagues, then you can have a quick win. So it's about finding these use cases that you can set up that makes the LLM, that makes these AIs useful for the team on an everyday basis. And I think marketing and sales are particularly easy, but when you move into other areas like project management is another great one. You know, today you can just throw in your project plan of a project and you can ask, give me feedback. Like, let's look at how can I reduce the risks of this project? How can I make sure that I deliver on time? You can actually have the LLM give you a project report every week based on your progress to give you a backlog. So I think it's just about finding these like skills use cases that you need.
Just to clarify, one term that you've used is shadow AI for the audience. They may not be familiar with the term. It's when the employee brings his own private LLM and is not using the enterprise system.
And I think, by the way, an early example of that was Dropbox. So when Dropbox came out, which was like 15 years ago or something like that, it was really difficult to share documents within a company. So people were super frustrated. They had to send everything by email. And suddenly this tool came out that you could start using for free, and everybody started using it. And the IT department got really upset. But eventually they allowed it. So instead of like a lot of companies actually started to adopt these, and then eventually Microsoft improved SharePoint and Google launched Google Drive. So I guess like I think also, so that's my point actually, that shadow AI is not necessarily something, it's bad in terms of corporate IP, but I think you should really look at it. Why are people using these services outside, and figure out how you can support the use cases instead of saying, like, instead of thinking about it as something negative.
Yeah. So if you think positive and say, well, if an employee builds a game-changing prompt or workflow, how should a company capture that intellectual property so it remains an asset of the firm?
Yeah, I think I mean, first of all, you need to remind employees that the things that they do with corporate content, with corporate information during their working hours belongs to the company. So you clearly can't put that information outside of your corporate tools and networks. So you need to probably remind them of that. Then the second thing becomes, so once you've provided them with the tools for this, Then you also need to be realistic because a lot of the time it's very easy to create prototypes to show something that you can do with a tool like Lovable or Replit or now also with Cloud Cowork and these tools. But the fact that you can create a prototype doesn't mean that you can put it in production in a big company. But I think it's a good starting point because if you see that employees are being proactive and coming up with ideas and tools and solutions, instead like you really need to make sure that you don't push them down, but instead you say, great, come in, invite them in for conversation with your teams and figure out together with the IT team, if you're a big organization or if it's a smaller organization, just figure out as a team, how can we bring this on board, this idea, this concept, this solution in a way that works for the company, that is secure and scalable. I think that's a couple of the things. But what a lot of companies are seeing, or what a lot of employees, they get frustrated because they come with these ideas and then everybody just tells them, yes, I know you could do that with this tool, but when we're going to do it with our IT team, this still takes 6 months. It's difficult to do integration, to do security testing, and if that's your starting point, you're in trouble.
Well, shadow AI is often seen as a security threat. It's also a massive signal of unmet needs. How can a founder legalize shadow AI without exposing the company to massive IP risks?
Yeah, so for example, if you're concerned about using the open ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude models, then what you can do is you can put it on AWS Bedrock, which is AWS hosting model of these models. They don't host all of them, but they provide, for example, Claude. Or if you're in Europe and you want a European model, you can have Mistral. And or you can also have through Microsoft Azure, you can get OpenAI. I think you can get Claude today. And when you use their models, it's hosted by them. There's no feedback going back into the model companies, so you know that your data is secure. Like Microsoft, Amazon, and Amazon AWS, they take security very, very seriously. So I think that's one way, a first way. So instead of just being worried about it, there's actually a simple way available today to make sure that it's secure. And then the other thing is, like I said, instead of them being frustrated and being outside, embrace what they're doing and bring it in-house. So find ways of making it secure for your company, and because it shouldn't be that hard.
What would a positive AI use policy look like? I mean, is it enough to just give everyone a corporate Gemini or Claude license, or is there a cultural shift required to stop people from sneaking off to their personal accounts?
I mean, my point is, if you provide people with good tools, there's no excuse. So you just need to make sure that you match the tools that they use in private, and that shouldn't be that hard, actually. It really should not be that difficult as a company. If you take once again, we use both the models from all four big model providers, but we also have our own tool that allows us to access all of the models in one space. And so these tools are accessible today. So there's just no reason why you can't provide it. But I think another thing that is being discussed a lot is how, and this is obviously for slightly bigger organizations, but how can you have AI ambassadors throughout the organization? So it's really identifying the people that are innovative, that are good about it, and by lifting them up and telling them, look, we love what you're doing, but the only thing we're asking for is use our internal tools and give us feedback on how to improve those and how to get them to work for you. And then what we're asking for in return of that is that you also help lift up the rest of the team so you can lead a workforce in your area and your department to help share your knowledge and your information with the rest of the team. And I think a lot of people get really excited about that.
So, in your experience, what is the carrot that actually gets employees to stop using their private tool and start using the secure corporate environments?
Like number one is just making sure that the tool is leveled so it provides the same level. I think another concern that you see from a lot of people, especially when it comes to sharing, is all right, I get it. that company information and knowledge belongs to the company. But what about my private chats? Like, what if I'm asking stupid questions to an LLM just as part of my daily work? Do I have to expose that to my colleagues? Does my manager have to see that? And I don't think it's in the same way that most companies don't read the employees' emails, but they can. So, I mean, the policy is typically, we will only read your email if there's a serious issue. Otherwise, we're never going to go back and read your email. And so I think that's part of it. It's like, all right, what's private to you, you can stay private as long as it's not needed for sharing. And then the things that are valuable for others, make sure that you share that. So use the team channels, set it up and share it. So yeah, I think that's a key thing here.
I'm pretty sure that everybody agrees that for AI to work, you need to have good data. But many SMEs feel paralyzed because their data is a mess. Do they truly need a perfect data warehouse to start seeing return on investment, or is there a minimum viable data strategy they can use to power corporate LLMs today?
I think there's definitely starting points. So you don't have to provide your ERP, your CRM within your LLM to start with. You can start by just connecting, and I was talking about this before, like brand guidelines to have corporate governance documentation. So the information that they need in terms of files accessible to the chats. And normally we refer to this as RAGs, retrieval augmented. So I mean that can often be a starting point for the finance department. It's just making sure that they have the financial reporting, the financial results, so that they can query that, they can look at it. For the marketing team, that they have the marketing material that they need, and so on per team. So that's a good starting point. But then eventually, obviously, like the more you can connect them to the actual data sources, the more value you will get out of it.
How can an executive distinguish between data that is ready for AI and data that is just noise and that will confuse an LLM or an agent?
I don't think this is a big issue anymore. I just think that with the latest models and also with greater context memory, so the ability to actually manage and load much bigger files and more information, and they're getting better and better at sorting this out. But I mean, but yeah, you do need it's if you have 50,000 files on your SharePoint, it's probably not going to help your LLM very much to provide all of that as context to start with. Like it's better to be selective about which information that you need and then keep on adding and adding and adding over time.
When we talk about adding context, to a corporate LLM, are we talking about massive technical integration, or is it just simple and uploading the right PDFs and these?
I would say with the latest tools, it's starting to become as easy as that. So with a lot of them, I mean, so basically what you do is you take the information that is available and you load it into vector databases, and the vector databases just make it very easy for the LLM to access the information, to look it up and to find the relevant information. But again, if you would do that with all your files to start with, I think, you will build a searchable database, but you're not going to build something that is great for a specific team. So it's much better to start selectively and build up. So start with a little bit of information and then a little bit more and then more and then more. And then eventually maybe it's all there.
You've noted that a lack of documented workflows is a primary barrier. If a CEO realizes their teams are operating by feel rather than by process, where should they start documenting first to get the highest AI leverage?
Yeah, I mean, so this differs a lot between organizations. When I worked at Vodafone, which although it was now 20 years ago, so a long time ago, but big organizations like that actually do have pretty good workflow descriptions, standard operating procedures, and so on for different teams. So if you're a technician in the field managing base stations, you're going to have very detailed instructions, which means that they actually have pretty good workflows. And for their ERPs, they also have very good workflow descriptions. And for customer service. So there's areas where big companies, I would say, are quite good. Office workers, generally, probably a bit less so. So if you look at all the product managers, project managers, marketing people, there's not much in terms of procedures or workflows. So there you actually have no starting point in terms of automation. And in smaller companies, small mid-size, and now I'm talking about like up to 150 people, they typically have no workflows at all. When we come in and talk to them and we start looking at one of our questions is, all right, where should we start in terms of workflow automation with autonomous agents? And the first answer you get is, we don't know because we don't have any workflow descriptions. Um, and this can be like an example of this could be a small finance team of 3 to 5 people. They manage a lot of incoming invoices. They manage outgoing invoices to customers. They do the monthly closing, reporting, and so on. And they will have some basic like documentation of how they work, but they definitely don't have any workflows. And they might be spending 30 to 40 hours every month just on allocating invoices that come in and go out to the right cost center, which is time consuming and typically something that the finance people don't enjoy. It takes a lot of time and interaction with other people in the company. So in a case like that, the first thing you need to do is just describe that workflow. And like you start by just describing the different steps in terms of how they do the allocation. Then you can bring in a basic tool like Make or Zapier or NHN. And then once you've done that, then you can start thinking about bringing AI into it. The crazy thing about that is that the way that companies sell it, or so like consultants sell it to companies today is let's go in and do AI. But in reality, the first thing that they need to do is very basic workflow uh, implementations.
So does AI make traditional business process reengineering, like BPR, obsolete, or is it the exact opposite? So does AI require us to be more disciplined about our human steps than ever before?
I mean, it's a curious thing. A lot of it, obviously, a lot of things are just naming. So what did we call it? We call it like robotic process animation before, right? For the last 10 years, and now it's
Yeah,
RPA.
yeah.
Now, I mean, actually AI. So what we're doing now in terms of like basic AI integration with workflows is actually the exact same thing. It's just a new terminology for the same thing. I think the different level that we can get to now is once you get to so the first level is typically like basic workflow descriptions and making sure that that works between the systems. And then two is maybe you add some AI, which in the case of like invoices could be that the AI system looks at the invoice. What department is this likely or what cost center is this likely to belong to? It allocates it, and then someone manually approves each one by clicking boom, 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 boom. And then the next step is that you bring in actually like automation into it, and that approval is automatic, but then maybe there's a secondary agent or instance that just checks, is this realistic? Does this seem to be correct? And if it is, then it moves on. But if it's not, then maybe it brings an alert, and then maybe a human needs to check out 2 or 3% of the invoices that are somewhat questionable. So that's like an example of what you can do with it. And then at some point, the humans disappear out of the loop completely. But I think we're a long time away from that so far.
But you're hitting a good point here because a lot of AI adoption is actually obliterating processes, meaning that those processes disappear. So in that finance team example, where you are allocating invoices, how do you convince a busy team to stop for 10 hours to document a process so that they can save 30 hours later? How do you lead that change, taking into account that they may also fear for their job, right? If you take away too many workloads.
Yeah. So this is also it's about what's the starting point of why you want to implement AI. I think You can so much of the discussions today online, you hear the warnings from the LLM CEOs and founders saying this is going to bring massive job destruction. We're replacing jobs. If you're a small mid-sized company, CEO or founder, actually your biggest challenge is typically managing growth. It's like how you hire people, how you hire enough people, how you keep up with things. So if you change the communication and say, look, our goal with implementing AI is that we can continue to grow with the same amount of people. We can do more. We can do more things. We can deliver better quality products, better quality services to our customers. And you know what's also great? We can remove some of the things that you really don't enjoy doing. So if that's your communication and not that we're going to become more efficient, more productive, and reduce job counts, then I think you can get the teams with you. Like a lot of, and I see this especially in finance teams, but also in marketing teams. They want to do what they're good at. Like they want to put their skills into the test. They don't want to do tedious. Well, obviously some people might, but most people do not want to do like simple administrative copy paste tasks. They want to use their brains. So I think if you bring that, if you communicate it in that way, you can get people with you and they will be willing to spend the time to make these things automated.
Yeah, moving into autonomous agents, there's a hype around autonomous agents, and this hype is massive. What is the one sanity check a board member should ask before a team spends six figures on an agentic workflow?
I mean, in my mind, they shouldn't do that at all. Uh, to start with, they should start with the more basic AI workflow automations. So where human is in the loop everywhere, and AI is just used in certain steps. And once they've gotten there and they've optimized it and they've used that for a while and it's working really well, then they can look at autonomous agents. And I think like one big challenge here, and you see this on if you go on LinkedIn, if you see it on X, Twitter, or YouTube, you find all of these AI videos with people saying that they built a completely autonomous business run by AI. They're now running 30 agents that have replaced 30 employees that are running the company and producing things. And most of the time, to be completely honest, it's just not true. And that's a challenge because when executives see this, they look at it and they're like, wow, I want this. Or also startup founders, like, I want to do this. And I think it's a massive distraction at the moment. That doesn't like, and this doesn't mean that you shouldn't be doing it. Like once you get to a certain level, and if you listen to Jensen, the CEO of Nvidia, for example, of course they are starting to become super productive with autonomous agents within the organization, but they're at a completely different level than most other companies. So I think you have to realize that there's a stepping stone that you have to get to. So don't start with the autonomous agents. Start with getting the basics right, which is typically data structure, getting like collaborative LLMs, the right context with the right input, and getting your workflows working with some AI integration.
I'm always saying that you don't want to entrust entirely your AI to run your company. And what does human in the loop or HITL look like in practice? Is it a permanent requirement or is this just a training phase for the AI? We know that today it's not yet working, but will it reach a point where you can entrust AI to do, compliance checks?
The answer is probably yes, uh, based on how fast we're moving at the moment. But like I said, I don't think most businesses need to worry about that right now. For the next couple of years, maybe the next 3 to 5 years, I think we have many other opportunities and we have so much to learn and we need to manage risks. So human in the loop is going to be critical. What happens beyond that, who knows?
Right, so if we focus on the short term to midterm, if agents are the destination, what is the milestone one project that every SME should complete in the next 3 to 6 months to ensure that they're ready for the agentic future?
It's basically what we just talked about, which is the getting like the basic workflows. So figuring out, for example, you can pick out 5 to 10 workflows within the organization that consumes a lot of time and with tasks that the employees don't enjoy doing, or workflows like challenges that the company is facing with things that they just don't know how to deal with. So it can be a certain type of customer service complaints and issues where the response time is too long. So maybe we just have to find a way of figuring out what is the workflow to deal with this. It can be, as an example, and I've seen this in a lot of B2C companies or B2C that do online sales. One of the challenges is when like people ask, they have problems with getting the product delivered. And the typical thing is that the customer service team, when they receive a question, they have to look up on the delivery company's website where the package is. And then sometimes they have to follow up with them. And just getting this basic integration between those two can save so much time and frustration because you can give the customers a quick answer and say, look, this is where your package is. Or maybe the answer is, you know what, the delivery company doesn't know where your package is right now, but we will get back to you in 24 hours. And then you notify a human within the team that someone has to call them up and figure it out. That's an example of a frustration that exists today. And if you get these workflows right, and if you get them right across the organization, then you have a good base together with the LLMs with context and the data structure. So again, if you get these three things right on the three, you have a good base for what to do next.
Thank you very much, Magnus. This was really enlightening. As key takeaway, we need to get the data right. We need to understand the processes, the workflow, bring the people on board, not let them play with their LLMs in their house. Just make sure that they integrate their know-how and collaborate with the team. And if I may ask you if you have any closing comments?
Yeah, I mean, one last tip as well that we do internally within my company is that once per week, we have an hour of just sharing insights and knowledge around how we use AI within the team. I've seen some companies, in our case, we're working with AI every day, all the time. But I've also advised and seen companies where one of the things that we've done is we've said every Friday afternoon between 4 and 6, where employees might not be that productive anyway, we have learning and playtime where everybody sits down, they get a small project, the teams, something to work on together and solve with AI because playing with it is so important. That's where we learn. It's the practical stuff. Like doing AI training is kind of pointless because the knowledge is going to be like it's just not going to be up to date a month or two later. So I think like the most important thing is just getting the tools, making the tools available to your teams and doing things with them and learning from that and sharing that.
Yeah, let me close with a challenging question. You may have heard recently that top strategy firm McKinsey had their RAG system hacked. And here we're talking about a top class consulting firm was supposed to be best in class in handling AI. And well, obviously they failed. So what would be the learning points for all those companies that want to adopt AI and they may fear the threat of the security threats and the cybersecurity, that they may feel that it is a hurdle? What would you tell them?
I don't think this is actually different from many other cybersecurity challenge. If you look at it today, most companies, I mean, I think your personal data has probably been stolen 100 times by now. if you're using the internet a lot, if you're on a lot of e-commerce sites and so on, the fact is the biggest companies in the world keep on getting hacked. And it's getting even more challenging for them now because now AI is hacking their systems as well. So actually, you should see this as an opportunity. I think, like speaking to some of the big banks, what they're realizing now is that they need to use AI as a countermeasure. Like they need to use AI themselves to scan their systems, to scan their software, to look for holes. So it's actually the other way around. To fight bad AI, you need good AI. So I think that should be the learning from McKinsey is like it's not to shut things down, not to block things. Um, it's instead to learn from it and make sure that they're using AI to protect themselves.
Do you think that companies will be so afraid of hackers or being hacked that they will start looking for air-gapped solutions?
It's possible, but generally those things don't work. Like there's specific areas where if you look in research for new medicines and so on, where they will have a supercomputer in a locked up room with no internet access. But most of the time, you don't want to do that because the only thing that will happen is if you tighten things up too much, is that you'll get back to shadow AI again. So no,
Magnus, thank you very much for your time and goodbye.
thank you very much.
Have a great day.
You
Cheers.
too.